right, welcome back. This is the Big Red Banter podcast, episode 2. I am Ryan, and this
I am Kyle.
is Kyle. So this is week 2 of our podcast. We talked last week about the possibility of not meeting up this week, but if you've been following the Reds this week, you know that there has been some big-time news as far as we go. We're going to start right off with talking about the Devin Mesoraco signing, which we're both pleased with. Details of that are going to be 4 years, $28 million deal. He's got a $28 million guarantee. Basically, and his incentives will bring him to $30 million at a max. So huge upside to this with the way Mesoraco performed last year. Bringing some big power into the lineup and really having a huge year as far as development goes. If he continues to perform and improve, this contract is going to be dirt cheap as far as we're concerned. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, for usually when a signing happens, there's not, it's always got to be talked about. And there's controversy. This one, I can't help but be excited about. I mean, when you look at what he was able to finally step into last year, 440 plate appearances. He had, 50 extra base hits, 25 home runs. The guy hit 4 grand slams. That's just some serious damage done in 440 plate appearances. It's insane. There's so much with him to be excited about. Defensively, too, he got a little bit better. Even if defensively he's not Yadier Molina, his offense could end up being the best offensive catcher in baseball. So.
Well, offense is definitely going to be the upside for Devin Mesoraco. I don't think anybody thinks of him as a great defensive catcher. He has an absolutely atrocious arm. I hope that was a focus for him in the offseason because that's definitely probably the weakest part of his game. But as far as offense goes, you couldn't ask for better production from this guy. I mean, we're talking last year, we saw improvements in basically every stat that he brought to the table. I mean, when you are, hitting 273 with OBP of 359, increased his slugging percentage by 200 points in a single season, and then to sign him for $28 million over 4 years, basically covering his arbitration years and still allowing him to feel comfortable entering free agency if he wants to do that at the end of this contract. So huge deal. I'm super excited about this.
That puts his most expensive year at $13 million, and that's in 2018. I mean, for someone that could potentially be an all-star every year as a Reds catcher that he's here, that is absolutely dirt cheap. I mean, what is he? It's going to be $2.4 million this year. I mean, that's got to be one of the best steals in baseball.
If the Reds can put a contender on the field, I seriously think 4 years from now, there's no reason that Mesoraco couldn't be a Silver Slugger at catcher or even be in contention for an MVP easily.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think with more plate appearances last year, I think he would have gotten a Silver Slugger. But I think the fact that he only had the 440 plate appearances, I think it was hard to give it to him over somebody like Luke Roy, you know what I mean, or somebody like Yadier Molina, who had the more plate appearances but still put up the good numbers.
And for all the negative that you negative feelings you have towards the Reds front office for big contract signings and not spending money the correct way, I think that taking and getting this talk right here and getting this contract signed, this is a huge win for the Reds front office. So. Yep. Finally, something this offseason that feels good as a Reds fan. You can take it and say, okay, at least, if nothing else in the offseason, we accomplished this. I think this is a definitely the biggest move of the season so far.
I haven't felt this good about a signing in a while, so just really, really nice to see. And it's nice to see a player sign a contract that's not making me just want to gouge my eyes out. Because with all the contracts that have getting signed, I mean Russell Martin's contract of $100 million over 5 years. I mean that's for Russell Martin, that's nuts considering how much better offensively Mesoraco might be than Russell Martin. So
there's definitely, there's definitely some risk in it for the Reds. I mean, it could have been a flash in the pan season for Devin Mesoraco, but I feel like last year he really caught stride, and he's on his way, to settling in to what he's going to be as a major league player. So
I don't think it's any coincidence that his best year for the Reds and the year when it finally clicked for the Reds is the year where they finally made him the primary catcher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any means that's a coincidence. That needed to happen, and to be honest, I think it should have happened sooner. I'm glad it's finally happened, but we could have had this kind of production from Mesoraco for the past 2 to 3 years if it could have been played right. So it's awesome to see it finally happen. It's awesome to see that he's going to be here. I mean, it puts him here until he's 30. Me and you had talked and said, that doesn't ruin his chances of another good contract past that. It lets him enter free agency or another extension with the Reds at age 30, which is not too old to re-sign a player or not too old for a team to want to pay money for him. Puts him still in a good position. For the most part, it gets him on our team through the actual core and best years of his career. So it's just when you look at that contract and look at the numbers he's put up, it's just up and up and up. It couldn't be any better, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the one big thing that we don't want to see is from a mid-market team is continue to pump money into older players. Last week we talked about Johnny Cueto and how the Max Scherzer, deal pretty much, ended any hopes of us being able to sign him. But in reality, giving Johnny Cueto, who has had his share of injuries, a contract, that's not really where the Reds need to be going with their money when maybe they have 1 year left of serious contention and then they're going to have to rebuild. I think that giving the money to the younger players and, maybe we can develop, we we have strong pitching in the farm system. Maybe we can develop that and make a run, 2 to 3 years from now with these young players, especially since, they're pursuing Todd Frazier and things like that too. So I think that this is huge, big step towards setting the team up for the future. And this is a statement, that we want to continue to grow the younger players on the team.
That being said, and you and me had discussed this, I'm very, very happy that they did this extension and picked this player over Todd Frazier to extend first. Because as much as personality-wise and as much as team captain-wise type of thing, potential that I love of Todd Frazier, I'm still not sold on him that he's going to do that kind of stuff consistently and have these kind of years consistently. He's not as young as a lot of other guys that would be on, only being in the league for a couple years. I know Todd Frazier's starting to get there to where he's reaching 30. A lot of people think him and a guy like Kozar are a little younger because they came in not that long ago, but they both came in, I think, after they were 25, which for a position player is slightly old. So Frazier just, to me, he had a really good year last year. I'm very happy he had that year. But, Mesoraco showed success in the minors and showed success coming up and showed potential that Todd Frazier didn't, whereas Todd Frazier was kind of a late bloomer. So Mesoraco being that cornerstone, catcher piece of offense where the league in general lacks an offense at the catcher standpoint, I'm really, really happy to see that they chose Mesoraco to go after first.
Well, here's the thing, too, is both of them are providing serious power to the lineup, and the difference is Devin Mesoraco is a better hitter. Todd Frazier has great power, but his he's a bad ball hitter. I don't know how long he can continue success like that in Major League Baseball. He goes through spurts. Um, Devin Mesoraco, his offensive year warrants him getting a contract before Todd Frazier. So.
I agree. Todd Frazier needs another year where his head's not bobbing down in the strike zone all the time when he's swinging. He's not just swinging at that junk pitch down the way again. He needs another year to, or at least another half year before they talk about extending, to show that this wasn't a flash in the pan, this wasn't any kind of fluke, that these kind of numbers can still project and these kind of numbers can still continue for him. You could say the same thing about Mesoraco, but it just seems Mesoraco's a lot more promising, and I'm happy for the Reds in this whole entire ordeal.
So, speaking of signings, last week the Reds also made it wasn't as big a move, but I feel like it definitely has a huge upside, and that's the signing of Jason Marquis to a minor league contract and a spring invitation or spring training invitation. So he's 36 years old. He's recovering from Tommy John surgery. The surgery was actually done by Kremchek here in Cincinnati. He's not that far removed from being an all-star. He was an all-star in 2009. He's just struggled from recovering from an injury. Obviously we have some rotation spots, available right now. We've got young pitching that's competing for it. I don't see anything wrong with, taking a guy like this who's pitched in the majors before, giving him an opportunity to bounce back and create a little competition there. There was a lot of trash talk that I read about this, and I really just do not understand nitpicking of this.
It's what every organization and fan should want. It's low risk, high reward. It's if you try for him, it doesn't work out, you don't lose anything. It's a minor league deal. What happens? He doesn't do well, and that's that. You took a shot, it didn't work. It's not like we immediately just plugged him into the rotation, went for it, and he lost us 20 games. It's not what we're doing. They're trying him out in spring training, and if he looks awful at spring training and stuff like that, he probably doesn't make the team. But if he comes out,
it's such a petty argument too. It's like, okay, the guy, let's not waste our money on them. Okay, I highly doubt the Reds wasted much money on Jason Marquis for a minor league signing and a spring training invitation. And the other thing I see is that everybody's all mad because it's another Walt Jocketty Cardinals signing. Who cares, man? If you have connections to the Cardinals, why not take advantage of that? Does anybody remember Scott Rowland? Because I do, and he was an integral part of bringing this team into contention. So why would you complain about using connections? I mean, the Walt Jocketty doesn't have a lot of funds available. If he can take a small move like this has huge potential. So I don't understand the trash talk around this deal.
The thing is, I get that Reds fans want to hate the Cardinals. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't like the Cardinals either. I respect the hell out of them, though. And the problem is, the worst part about a player coming from the Cardinals is it usually means he's got a good upbringing. You know what I mean? Because they know how to groom.
I mean, they have arguably the best farm system in baseball.
Pitching, hitting, you name it. I mean, they know how to groom their players. Their players came up and they immediately contribute, and it's ridiculous. And so it's like, and it wasn't like Marquis was a long-time Cardinal. You know what I mean? You can't just keep, it's anyone that you get that's going to have connections to another team at some point as a GM or owner, whoever. They're going to have connections that were with that team and that organization. It's at some point people got to stop crying about it. I get it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to dislike players on your rivals' teams. I get that. But once they're not on that team anymore, you got to let that go. It's at that point, they're a baseball player. And you have to understand that, they might have trashed our team at one point, or they might have played our team at one point. They may have plunked one of our guys at one point, whatever. But it's not that anymore. And at some point, you got to be a baseball fan, and you got to let that go. This is a lower risk, high reward contract, and there's nothing to do but be optimistic about it. And doing anything else, I think, is petty and just a dick thing to do. It's just my opinion. But it's opinion that more people need to have because people need to let this kind of stuff go and just be excited for the small things the Reds are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my biggest gripes is seeing fans that, I know it's the off season. I know you want to talk about baseball. I know you're nitpicking everything that goes on. I get it. But take a step back, breathe for a second, and realize this deal has huge upsides to it. Who's to say that going into spring training that one of these young guys, what happens if somebody gets hurt? We know that Homer Bailey is, recovering from an injury. We know that Tony Cingrani's coming back from an injury. These are all guys that are in contention for the rotation, and Homer's established in the rotation.
Yeah.
What happens if they can't go? Now we have another guy who has major league experience who's sitting in the wings. I mean, he's a 4.65 career ERA. That's nothing to write home about, but that easily could be a number 5 in your rotation. And he's got major league experience. It's not like you're bringing some scrub up from the minor leagues to take innings away. Well, we have a legitimate shot. He's been there before.
And who says that, this late in his career, with needing a jump start, with needing to try to get back in, that he doesn't pitch well enough that he can come in and be a pivotal part of our bullpen? Who says he can't come in and do what Simon did?
That's a great point. I mean,
who says that he can't come in and contribute? And if he does, if he comes in and contributes, everyone's just going to shut up and they're going to support him like they should. I was the same way when Simon came on. I was upset that we picked up Simon, and I'm really losing it on who we sent down in order to bring Simon on.
I don't remember. The only thing I can remember about Alfredo Simon was he was on like prior to us picking him up, he was on the mound for the Orioles when they destroyed the Red Sox season in Game 162. That's the only thing I could remember about him. He comes to the Reds, and if it wasn't for him last year, there's no way we would have finished anywhere close to what the record we had. So
my point is when Alfredo Simon got signed, I forget what the premise of it was, but I was upset because he was getting an opportunity and somebody wasn't. But then, you know what happened? He proved himself, and I shut up about it, and I supported him, and that was it. And I should have done that from the get-go, and I didn't. And, I learned from my mistake. I understood there. The organization knew what they were doing, and I didn't. And from there on, I pretty much shut up. It's they proved me wrong pretty hard there. He proved me wrong pretty hard there. At that point, you just have to be more open. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing, rolling into spring training, some stuff I was reading about this week. I talked to you a little bit about Billy Hamilton working with Delano DeShields. Don't know exactly how I feel about this. I have some mixed feelings on it, so I'll give you my take on it. So basically, Billy Hamilton has spent the offseason in Atlanta working with the AAA manager Delano DeShields. He's basically been working on bunting and making contact. That's great. The part that I don't necessarily like is that the emphasis in his offseason has been on strength and conditioning. He didn't play winter ball. I don't know if that's necessarily going to make a difference or not. We'll see, because this is the first time as a professional he hasn't played. So maybe taking that time off, it might affect his timing. He may have a later start this year. I'm not sure how that's going to affect him. I don't think it's going to be too big a deal. More what I'm looking at is the strength and conditioning. So I love that Billy Hamilton is working on bunting and contact because I saw way too many garbage strikeouts from him last year. I saw way too much of the grip it and rip it mentality when he was up to the plate. This guy has the speed. We all know what his weapons are. As a Reds fan, it's the most exciting thing that you see from him. You want to see him get on base. The on-base percentage of .292 last season is just not cutting it. Yeah. So, he has got to get better with contact. He's got to be able to lay that bunt down. And, like you pointed out to me, I mean, he had 6 home runs, which was nothing that nobody expected that going into the season. But that's not necessarily something that I want to see. If Billy Hamilton is hitting home runs, that says to me that he is trying to accomplish the wrong thing when he's
he had 6 home runs. That's cool and all, great. But for as fast as a guy he is, he has, don't get me wrong, 25 doubles for a regular player isn't. With a dude that was in some of those doubles, he legged out because he forced it into a double, so they weren't even actual doubles. But a guy like that, that's supposed to be a slap hitter, supposed to be an on base kind of guy, he should end up with 30 plus doubles, no questions asked, every single year, just based on his speed alone. So, and in 600 plate appearances, he walked 34 times. It's like you have to try to only walk that much. That's
well, I mean, he had a great first half. His first half looked fantastic. You know, I was super surprised. Last year, at the end of the season before last, everybody was all excited. He got the September call up, and I was not buying it. I had small sample size. I was not having it. Wasn't buying into Billy Hamilton at all. First beginning of the season came around, I was like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe he is putting it together. But then he started to revert back to that same Billy Hamilton that I saw later on in the season, swinging at a lot of stuff out of the strike zone, a lot of like half-hearted swings, like he wasn't sure whether he wanted to actually commit to that pitch or not. The doubles thing that you brought up doesn't bother me that much because if he's getting, you know, if he can get on base and get a single, you know, on an infield hit and then steal 1 or 2 bags, I'm good with that. You know, that's essentially the same thing to me. But, you know, another thing we talked about on the phone is that, you know, in addition to that, he has got to develop more as a base stealer as well. With that kind of speed, you've got to have the knowledge to be able to steal the bags too. A lot of times we saw him go on, you know, first or second pitch, and that's not doing anything to help him out. You've got the speed. If he can learn to steal a bag technically too, dude, he's going to be unstoppable.
I was really surprised, like, 'cause it's, you know, he had 56, but almost everywhere was projecting him to steal at least over 60. And so for the 56, you know, I mean, when you look at, you know, that was second in all of baseball. Not terrible. That's obviously decent. But then you look at how much he got caught, which was 23, and that was first in all of baseball. You know, you take those, you know, you take those caught stealings and you put those in half. You know, he's at 66 stolen bases. That's where he should have been. You know what I mean? But it's, you know, the 23 caught stealing, that's a lot. And I understand that he tried a lot more than a lot of other guys, and so sometimes that translates, but that's still getting caught a lot. And that means that he was just being really predictable. You know.
Well, Billy Hamilton is going to wreak havoc when he's on the bases, okay? He is going to get in the pitcher's head when he's on base. He's on base. He's making everybody nervous. If you are on base and you are a legitimate threat to steal, whoever's at the plate is seeing more fastballs. So if you can hang out at first a little while longer and maybe potentially give the guy who's sitting behind you a decent pitch to hit, and he can drive that in the gap, and you're scoring from first base, I'll take that too. You know, he's got a lot. His speed isn't just stealing bags. It is his reputation has got to be to intimidate pitchers and to develop the offense as a whole. I mean, if he's on, you know, first base, and you've got a pitcher who is more worried about him than whoever's up the bat, that's a big advantage for us. So he needs to take advantage, not of that.
Especially if it's someone like Todd Frazier or Joey Votto that on a mistake fastball can launch it at any point in time. That's huge. And if he goes on the first pitch the majority of the times, then that means with that base open, especially if there's like 2 outs, with that base open, that means that that player at the plate is getting crap pitches the entire rest of the time he's up there because they don't really care that bad if they put him on first base.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't know. I like Billy. I think Billy still has a lot of development.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I think that this offseason is going to help him. You know, there are a lot of ball players who speak very highly of Delano DeShields. I just don't want Billy to get focused on strength and extra base hits or, you know, home runs and take away from where his real advantage should be in the game. That's my biggest concern. So we'll see how that pans out. I don't want to see that long swing out of him anymore. His swing is entirely too long. He's got to shorten up and learn to be a slap hitter.
Here's the good thing about it that I liked about this offseason. At the Caravan, he came out and was very humble. And he said that we were working on bunting and making contact, and I struck out way too much. If he can cut those strikeouts down to, I think he struck out around 120 times. For a contact guy that's that fast, that's still way too much. If he can cut that down under 100 and he can get that walk rate up, that's huge. Because, I mean, to be honest, in my opinion, the batting average, I can deal with like a 260 batting average from him if he can be at about a 320 on base percentage, 330 on base percentage or higher. The batting average isn't such a big deal. For him, it's the on-base percentage, and a 292 was just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, not to take away from the conversation, but a quote from the Reds Caravan when Billy Hamilton and Eric Davis were on the same leg, and someone asked Eric Davis if he could beat Billy Hamilton in a foot race in his prime, and Eric Davis said, I could beat Billy Hamilton right now, so I would pay money to do that race.
I would love to sit down and listen to that conversation.
Dude, Eric Davis is the man.
At some point, they got to do it. You know, that's the kind of guys that I think Billy should be working with, too. I know Delino DeShields is the Reds guy, and he's their go-to guy for that kind of stuff, but, you know, get him with Eric Davis, get him with Joe Morgan, get him with some of these guys just to get him as much pointers and as much as work as they can. He's obviously that young of a guy that he's still like a sponge and is going to take stuff in. You know, you got to get him as much help as you can. So I still think he's got a lot of potential. I still think he's got a lot of room for growth. But he's also got a lot of room to get stuck in a habit or a lot of room to regress if he gets too ahead of himself or gets too focused on certain things. You know what I mean? So it really just depends on, you know, what they do with him and what they have him focus on. They need to make sure that he is not hitting the ball in the air at all. That ball needs to be on the ground every time he hits it.
Absolutely. There were way too many times last year that he dipped his back shoulder and popped one up. I mean, the guy, I'll say it again, the weapon that he brings to the game is just insane. I mean, I watched the guy tag up and score from third base on an infield fly ball to the second baseman last year. I mean, I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But he has to get on base and be able to use that. If he's not able to get on base and take advantage of that, then that skill means nothing.
I hate the saying you can't steal first, but unfortunately with him it was.
Oh God, nothing pissed me off more than the beginning of last season. It's like everybody and their brother was like, "Oh, can't steal first base, can't steal first base." Yes, we get that. Thank you for that.
The problem is that it came to fruition, and that phrase kept getting brought up all day.
Oh God. It's true, but you know, if anybody could steal first base, I think Billy Hamilton would be the one. I mean, that guy it's insane. That's so fast.
So we can just be hopeful that, you know, he comes to spring training and he's ready, he's humbled, and he understands that he's got to do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, that's pretty much not a whole lot going on for the Reds this week. The Devin Mesoraco was, topic was the big one. We were definitely excited. I called Kyle right away. I was like, I cannot wait to talk about this. You know, the last thing I was reading about this week that kind of irked me a little bit was this is more just baseball in general. Rob Manfred took over as the new commissioner of baseball this week. He officially took over duties, and like within 24 hours, made a statement that pissed me off already. So Rob Manfred basically said this week in an interview with ESPN that he's open to eliminating the shift to increase offense. All right, so let's talk about why this makes absolutely no sense at all. So one of the big things that they talk about in baseball and have been going on and on with for years, and this year are instilling it in the minor leagues to try and use as a test, is they're trying to speed games up. So they think the kids these days don't have the attention span to pay attention to a baseball game because it goes on too long. So they're putting in a pitch count, right? So Rob Manfred wants to take the shift away to increase offense in the game because he thinks that will make more people interested in the game. Let's think about this for a second. What innings in baseball take longer than any other innings in a game? Hey, maybe when a team decides, oh, we're going to string some hits together and score 5 or score 6 or score 7. What happens in these? You take the shift away, pitcher gets rocked, now you got to wait for another bullpen pitcher to come in. Next pitcher gets rocked, now you got to wait for another bullpen pitcher to come in. I mean, come on, man. If you have to pick one or the other. You can't say, hey, we want to increase the pace of the game and have offense. I mean, that's not going to happen. If anything, if you're instilling the no offensive shift or the no defensive shift, I think you're going to, even with the pitch count, probably increase game time. There are teams out there that spend a lot of time scouting for teams and scouting against players, to set up those shifts and give themselves the best chance to win. I just think that this is absolutely ridiculous.
It's spending a lot of time. But there are people that they've hired that's their job. You know what I mean? So what? Like, teams have invested this kind of money into this now, and all of a sudden you're just going to take that away from them? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And the problem with it is, I'm assuming that most people that are going to listen to this are big baseball fans. So obviously know, they started trying out the pitch clock in AAA this year, and they started, trying out the pitch clock in the fall league. And I'm not really against that. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but there are certain batters and certain pitchers, looking at Sean Casey, looking at Gomes, you know what I mean? Looking at, like you were saying.
We have to speed up the John Lesters of the world, basically.
Yeah, they take too much advantage of that. I get that. It makes sense. They're giving them 15 seconds per pitch to figure it out. That's not
plenty. That's absolutely plenty.
Ridiculous. That's very, very fair. But when you're taking away the shifts, I just want to understand, he sounded very smug and confident about it, but it's not that. It's not the kind of thing you can be that confident about because he didn't explain anything. Because you're going to say you're going to take away the shifts. What does that mean? What shifts are you taking away? Is double play depth still going to be okay? Is coming up on the infield grass for the third baseman to try to block a bunt going to be okay? Is playing deep and playing shallow in the outfield or playing shading left, shading right, is that going to be okay?
Well, yeah, I get where you're going, but the one thing that most people have been saying is that you could still shift on the infield, but you would not be able to bring a player to the other side of second base. So you could play no doubles defense in the outfield. You could play in if you were trying to come home, things like that. That's what they were saying. But like a typical, like, just for example, like the Ted Williams shift, where you're bringing a whole extra player to the right side of second base.
Yeah.
That's more what they're talking about.
I get it, but it's like, so you just want to make it to where that the batter doesn't have to try harder. That's pretty much what you're saying.
I just do not agree with the offensive advantage thing. Look, baseball has always gone through natural periods where it's dominated by pitching and dominated by hitting. It happens. If you go back in history, I'm doing a little bit of reading on sabermetrics right now to try and increase my knowledge on that. And one of the big things with sabermetrics, especially like any of the plus stats, they basically take an average over time, so that rules that out. So there's no you can compare a hitter from a pitcher-friendly era to a hitter-friendly era. So baseball has always gone through those natural periods. We just happen right now to be in a pitching-dominated era. So I think that this argument is, one, it's probably never going to get approved. I would assume that this has to have at least approval from the Players Association, probably ownership as well. There's no way that this is going to make it through. But the fact that he's bringing this up day one of being, the baseball commissioner, that's what concerns me. I don't know. I just think that day one, if you have if you're trying to change baseball that much already, I have a problem with that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of the things that helps make baseball a game of chess. It's one of the things that creates strategy. That baseball is all about strategy, and taking away a part of the strategy and making it more brute force like football is something I'm against.
Yeah, football. To bring it into football standards too. I'm not a huge football fan. I watch football casually, not like I do baseball. But one thing that always irritates me about football is, you have let's use a deep pass to a receiver as an example. You have the wide receiver and defensive back hand fighting for a football. They both go up, and 9 times out of 10, if there's any contact that's going to draw a flag, it's on the defender. They both should have a right to the ball. Don't they? Shouldn't they both have a right to the ball? Why is it the defender's fault? So same thing to relate to this to baseball, why should if you're giving a hitter one entire side of the field, if you have a left-handed batter up and you're saying, hey, we're going to leave the left side of the infield open because we don't think you're going to hit it over there, shame on the hitter for not taking advantage of that.
Well,
don't put it on the defense for trying to be smart. I mean, put it on the hitter for not taking advantage of it.
Not just the hitter either. Shame on the coach, shame on the organization for not taking the time to sit down with the players and talk about beating the shift and saying we have to do this because they have to stop playing this on you guys because it's hurting our offensive numbers. They need to sit down with a guy like Jay Bruce or, a guy like, how they do with in a Prince Fielder, they play like a ridiculous pull-on also.
Yeah. Him and David Ortiz gets his kill.
Yeah, and just say, in this at-bat, I want you to hit to that side of the field. I don't care if you have to bunt it. I want you to do it. And I don't want you to do it, and I'm not saying that they should do it every at-bat, but if they do it once every other game, it's going to be enough that it's going to make teams have to start looking for it, and they're going to have to back their shift up a little bit.
Let me bring this up. So if I talk about the Reds facing the Cardinals this year and getting beat by the shift, what's the first name that comes to mind?
Matt Adams.
Exactly. So it can be done. And what did the Reds do? They shifted, and finally, after they got beat 3 times, they said, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore.
And they stopped. And they'll do the same thing with Jay Bruce. If Jay Bruce lays down crappy dribblers down that line, it doesn't even matter if it's good contact, just crappy dribblers down that line. He'll get hits out of it, and they'll learn that they need to screw off with that whole tactic, and they'll throw it out, and they'll stop using it on him. They might use it on him in big-time situations, like if there's like a bases loaded, or not bases loaded necessarily, but you know what I mean, because that's too drastic a situation. With a couple guys on, or a guy on, or a one-run game or something like that. They might try to use it on him because they know he's going to try to put it out. I get that. Yeah. But they're not going to use it on him every single time he comes up the bat. And that's
it's definitely situational.
I was really disappointed when you told me that on WLW, Lou Piniella supported this abolishing the shift nonsense.
Yeah, man, I just happened to be listening to it. So it's weird because I was listening to, it was like, I think it was the next day. I had watched the video, was upset about it. I had texted you about it, talked to you about it, was reading stuff online about it. Then the next day, I'm listening to WLW, and Lou Piniella is on there as a guest, and he brings it up out of nowhere and says, well, I think that's a good idea, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on, man. How much time did you spend in the game? Do you really think, that eliminating the shift is going to create some gigantic offensive force that's going to bring, new life to the game? Baseball is a beautiful game. It does not need anyone's help. It's perfect. We don't need to be messing with stuff like that. Why even mess with it?
and ideas like this are desperate short-term fixes that don't need to happen. He's talking about small things.
It screams that Rob Manfred is trying to leave his mark on the game, and I'm not okay with that.
Oh yeah, and like I said, it's short term. That's not going to be any type of long-term fix. That is not going to fix anything long-term. If they want to sit there and they want to try to up ratings of, things like the World Series, ratings on TV and stuff like that, stop making them at 9 o'clock. How about you do that instead of getting rid of the shift?
Or how about starting programs up to bring interest back to baseball in the youth? If you want kids who grow up playing baseball, watch baseball as adults. There you go. If you want to bring more interest, start bringing more programs to get more youth involved in baseball.
Also, promote it like they do football. Promote the stars like they do football. You do more stupid crap like they did with Mike Trout in the Subway commercials. You know what I mean? Like, show just the casual fans and the kids who want to get into baseball, show them the All-Stars. Put them on TV, like what they did when they tried to put David Ortiz on that MTV2 show.
Yeah, it was a good effort. It was
a good idea. Do more things like that. But doing things like this just to try to get rid of the shift, thinking that's going to spark offense and people are going to like that and come back to watching baseball, that's not how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
That was a desperate, short-term thing that he just wanted to try to instill and make a big statement about as soon as he comes in.
Look,
I wasn't about it.
I don't. It may, like I said, it's never going to get passed because it would have to go through the Players Association. I don't think anyone is ever going to agree to do that. It just irks me that is your first idea coming into office. The office there is that, less than 24 hours with commissioner duties, and you're making videos with ESPN talking about things like that. So it's just really irritating.
It was a very dated, old school mentality of a statement, and that's coming in an era where things are starting to become more new school, more sabermetric friendly, and more updated. And I just think that was not a good. Even I heard him in the interview. Even the reporter immediately thought that sounded like a stupid idea. So it's
I don't know, man. It's an interesting statement to make when you have just started. So, we've pretty much covered everything that we had for this week. Not a whole lot of news. In closing, we just wanted to give a quick shout out. We wanted to represent the current NL Central. It wasn't the NL Central when he was playing there, but give a little respect to Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. Let's Play 2. So he died this week. Hall of Famer, great Cubs player, probably honestly the greatest Cub there ever was. So quick respect to him. The only thing we have is I just wanted to give a quick countdown. We have 21 days till pitchers and catchers report, and 68 days till opening day. Can't wait. Putting in for vacation for that this week.
Yeah, we are planning on doing a lot of coverage of the minor league games for the people that can't really stay up to date on them, can't really follow them that well, and want to know more about what goes on. We're going to cover them a lot. We're going to talk about stats. We're going to talk about who's doing well, who's not doing well, who's injured. We're going to try to talk about everything that you might miss in there. So if you're really interested in that, keep checking up on us every week. We're going to have more updates and more, we're going to talk about game by game what kind of went down.
So we should be back next week, depending if how much we have to talk about. So looking forward to spring training. Kyle, you got anything else for this week?
Go Red Legs.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right. Go Red Legs. Want to give one last shout out. So we have an email address, bigredbanterpodcast@gmail.com. I totally screwed up our Twitter handle last week. It is Big Red Banter PC on Twitter. So shoot us a follow on there, and then also our WordPress, www.bigredbanterpodcast.wordpress.com.
Yeah, we'd love
So
for
more.
arguments. We'd love for some, some talk, some different points of views that we can talk about. And if you give us a subject to talk about in there, we'll give you a shout out about it. You know what I mean? We'll talk about with you and everything. And we just love to be able to bring up, this person said this and like talk about it and bring them up and let them know and thank them for giving us a good point. So you got anything you want to talk about, anything you want to gripe about, something I said or Ryan said, let us know. We'd love to hear it.
Yep, I will defend my opinions to the death. So, all right.
All right.
That is all for this week. We will see you all later. Say bye, Kyle.